And back to that helicopter crash from earlier today. Many of those killed were Marines based at Camp Pendleton in California. That was home to an extraordinary group, the men of Pale Rider 3. Tonight, we're taking an extended look at the sacrifice these men have made so Iraqis can have better lives. In last year's battle for Fallujah, that 43-man infantry platoon lost 8 members, more than a dozen wounded. But the survivors emerged with a firm conviction that what they did was right. These are the men of Pale Rider 3.
Some people, they ask me, if you had to do it over again, will you join the Marine Corps, after everything you've been through? I look at them, I say, without a doubt.
The platoon commander, a squad leader.
Combat's combat. If you've never been there, you're never really going to experience what it's like.
And the platoon's medic. This is the story of their war and of the men they left behind.
I always expected him to come home. I never thought that he wouldn't come home.
Their journey follows the evolution of the war, from the initial invasion to the chaos in the streets of Fallujah, the elusive threat of suicide bombers and roadside explosives.
It was Labor Day. That was easily the worst thing that I will ever go through in the rest of my life.
First, a prologue. Early 2003, with each of these men in separate units, each getting ready to invade Iraq.
The expectations are always very, very foggy. You read a lot about it, you see a lot of movies about combat, but you really don't know what it's going to be like. And it's something, you think about a lot.
Wade Zirkle was at the tip of the spear, part of a light armored vehicle unit whose job was to plow ahead of the main army, race north all the way to Tikrit, Saddam Hussein's hometown. For Zirkle, the hottest action came deep in enemy territory, just north of Nasiriyah.
We were surrounded one night by several hundred Iraqis, and they kept coming at us, and we were in a circular 360-degree formation with all our weapon system pointed outboard, and they kept coming at us in waves, and we kept taking them out, and they kept coming. It lasted from sunset all the way till 3 or 4 in the morning, just nonstop. And we traveled hundreds of miles through Iraq, and nobody got hurt, and we just drove home when it was all done. So it wasn't, it was real combat, but it was almost, too good to be true.
The other Marines, scattered in different units for the invasion, had similar stories of rapid and surprising success, intense firefights with remarkably few casualties.
I think early on it was, but I think a lot of units had stories like that of enemy who were very determined but were pretty stupid and pretty blind about what they were up against.
But if the enemy was stupid then, it didn't stay that way. And when the men came together a year later in the platoon called Pale Rider 3, when they deployed to Fallujah, everything had changed.
We got hit with mortars, small arms. So the very first time in the city, a group of us with the Army got hit, and they brought us out, and we're like, wow, if it's going to be like this the whole 7 months, and it's going to be a rough time.
Unfortunately, squad leader Billy Conard's feelings were a dark omen. When we come back, the fight for Iraq turns deadly for the men of Pale Rider 3. Welcome back. We continue now with the story of Pale Rider 3. Lieutenant Wade Zirkle had already done a stint in Iraq when he was named platoon leader. They wanted someone with experience. The platoon's mission in the spring of 2004 was to go to Iraq's most dangerous city, Fallujah.
Hands off Fallujah!
At home, the political campaign was in full swing. The war in Iraq, its execution, the growing body count, all potent political issues. But the men of Pale Rider 3 had no qualms about the war they were being asked to fight.
When we get fired at, we have positive identification on our enemy targets, and we take them out, and we do away with the terrorists.
We wanted to show the people of Fallujah that we weren't afraid to go in there and to assert our presence and to help people out, and that's what we did. We go in with a couple Humvees with heavy machine guns on them, and the rest of the Marines are dismounted, and we walk through the city, and we have interpreters, and we talk to the people, and we see what they need.
At first, the Marines carried out small-scale incursions into the city, eager to hit the enemy hard, but restrained by commanders trying to avoid bloodshed. It was on one of these patrols on the 26th of March, Pale Rider suffered its first loss. Private First Class Leroy Sandoval.
My platoon was tasked with setting up a blocking position on a major intersection to let some other units egress out of town. And right as we were setting up the blocking position, we came under pretty heavy fire with RPGs and machine guns on some rooftops very close to us and one vehicle driving by.
You know what? We had went through Fallujah with the greatest of luck and God by our side, because we literally had rockets shooting between people talking. And the concussion, I mean, numbing their ears, and gunshots literally spraying, almost circling you. And I mean, I'm just getting chills talking about it.
They were on the rooftop shooting down at us. It was intense, because all of a sudden it went from 0 to 60, and just like that.
This satellite image shows the precise location, a series of low buildings on the edge of the city.
Leroy Sandoval, he was on a Humvee. We had 2 Humvees with the platoon at that time, and he was manning his machine gun, and he effectively suppressed the enemy on the rooftops and took them out.
He played a vital role in clearing the most busy side of the fire coming at us, and I guarantee I held his hand and told him that, you know. I told him he saved our freaking lives, because I tell you what, man, he was a good kid.
It was weird to hear those words, you know, where Sandoval, to hear the words, he's dead. It's because I didn't experience that the first go-around. I've never experienced, you know, never been though, aside from my first time, this was my first real big combat experience, and to have an actual Marine in your platoon killed, it kind of sends a shockwave to you, like how real it really is out there, you know.
Sandoval's death hit the platoon hard. A few days later, 4 private contractors from the Blackwater security firm were ambushed, their corpses mutilated. Dark days. When the order came to take the city, the Marines were ready.
When we found out about the Blackwater killers, I mean, it again reaffirmed what we knew about these people that we were fighting. I mean, they were bad, evil, horrible human beings, if you can even call them human beings.
The men of the platoon say the invasion that followed went well, but then the decision to pull back.
We're hoping that the tribal sheikhs who have come to help with the situation will be able to talk to the people inside the town and say, let's end this, let's bring this to a conclusion.
From the edge of the city, Pale Rider 3 watched the Iraqi government forces struggle while the insurgents built strength. Back home in Concord, California, the increasingly violent war was taking a toll on the family of one of the Marines, Corporal Mick Nygaard Bukowski.
It's gut-wrenching, you know. You don't sleep at night, you don't eat, you worry about your son, and they all become your son. So you worry about every single one of them. It's a scary thing for a mom to go through, you know. I'm sure same for a dad, same for a grandma.
Brian and Joan Bukowski's son had signed up with the Marines just before 9/11. They say he was born to be a Marine, full of bravado and the fighting spirit.
I told him, you don't have to go. And he looked at me and he says, no, Dad, I want to go. He said, I want to take the shot. And what he meant was he wanted to take Saddam Hussein out if he had, you know, if he had the opportunity.
Now their son was in the thick of it, and as the Marines attacked Fallujah, then pulled back, the Bukowskis were feeling frustrated.
They're trying to solve these issues through diplomatic means. They're failing. They're failing. These people don't care. What they care about, what they understand is that is the force.
Wade Zirkle has a different perspective.
As Marines, in Fallujah, we wanted to continue the mission and keep on rooting out the terrorists. But you know, hindsight's 20/20 situations like that. In any kind of combat situation, you can always do things differently. But I think it was noble that we were giving peace a chance and working out a negotiation. And the understanding was, if the negotiation failed, we'd be back. The negotiation failed, and we came back, and we really completely crushed the terrorists in that city.
While they waited for the final assault, they patrolled the periphery of Fallujah. Routine, punctuated by random violence, and the Purple Hearts kept coming. In June, an Iraqi on a motorcycle dropped a grenade into a Marine fighting hole. Lance Corporal Ben Gonzalez instinctively rolled away and took the blast on his back and legs. His body shielded the Marine next to him. Lance Corporal Matthew Bosvert lost a leg when his Humvee hit an IED. All preludes to catastrophe.
Anything that you see on Private Ryan, all those, I mean, that's what it felt like when you run up on the scene and there are literally about 20 bodies on the ground.
With the fighting in Fallujah on hold, the end of their duties was nearly in sight. But as you'll see for these Marines and their families, tragedy still lay ahead. That part of the story when we come back. The men of Pale Rider 3 may have suffered the highest casualty rate of any platoon in Iraq. Last summer was supposed to be a quiet time during the war. As diplomats tried to negotiate a peace in Fallujah, Pale Rider 3 watched over a major road west of the city. The men were guarding against insurgents planting roadside bombs. Labor Day of 2004, and the men of Pale Rider 3, just a month from coming home, were on patrol. Over all those hours in Humvees, the men had grown close, especially the more senior Marines, Connard, Zirkle, and Corporal Mick Nygaard Bukowski. Back home in Concord, California, Mick's parents, Brian and Joan, were making plans for their son's return, less than a month away.
We were talking about going fishing and you know, riding motorcycles and just talking. He was gearing up to come home. He was ready to come home and live a little bit.
The Marines were well aware of the danger of thinking too much about home. Smelling the barn, they called it. But nothing short of blocking the busy highway could have prevented what happened next.
We were going to relieve 1st Platoon, and we were just like we'd always done. We were loaded up, headed out in the area, and boom, that's when it happened.
As Pale Rider 3, 45 Marines, including the drivers, drove along in a convoy of 3 7-ton trucks in a Humvee, an Iraqi suicide bomber drove a small pickup alongside the lead truck, where Wade Zirkle was riding, and detonated a massive bomb.
I looked down, I had a radio, and I was making sure the handset was screwed in nice and tight, and about the time I looked up, I just saw this huge fireball, you know, ahead of us, and, you know, it's just, you're kind of shock and awe. You're like, wow, you know, what just happens? I told myself on the way up there, I'm going to see some things up here I need to prepare myself for, some things I won't like, and it was just utter chaos. We got up there and the truck was just pretty much obliterated. It was, for a big truck, it was just looked like someone just taking a can and just crumpled it.
I remember the initial pop that I heard, and then I was unconscious for, I guess, about a minute, and I got thrown out of the truck. A huge explosion had gone off, and you know, I couldn't really see very well, but I could tell that, you know, I'd probably lost some Marines. And it turns out, you know, there were 7 Marines that were killed in the bomb.
Zirkle was blown out of the truck, his hands severely burned.
I remember coming out, and I saw him laying outside the truck, and I was kind of stunned because I saw him laying there. He didn't have any of his gear on. I guess it was blown off in the blast.
My corpsman, Doc Santos, and Doc Worley ran up and started treating the Marines that were injured, and saved. I know for sure saved 1 life of a Marine, and definitely.
Only 5 of the 12 Marines in the truck survived. Doc Worley, traveling in a truck behind, sprinted to the scene.
And you can't really touch anybody because you have to literally run around to every single person and get a general quick, I couldn't even touch them really, just quick assessment of how bad everything was and who I needed to start on. Because there were things, you know, I mean, running around left and right saying, you know, Marine, come over here, put your hand here. If I don't see you putting every bit of pressure you can on this, I'm going to come over here and hit you. Lay your head near his, you know, nose about every 10 seconds. And if this guy stops breathing, you scream for me so loud that there's no way I can miss it. And you just run off, you know, and you come back to him whenever you can.
Among the dead, Mick Nygaard Bukowski.
And my mom called me on my cell phone to tell me to rush over, to come over to her house, and I heard it in her voice. I didn't even realize it, what was going on. I thought there was another issue that I had to go handle. Maybe she fell.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
You tell yourself that it's got to be some other thing.
Well, I thought to myself it was another thing. I'd never even thought about Mickey until we were driving home or driving to her house. Then it dawned on me, this is what I might be coming into. But, you know, there were 2 Marines at her door, and, you know, it was really bad for my mom. It was hard for her.
As the Bukowskis prepared to bury their son and Wade Zirkle was evacuated to Germany, Pale Rider 3 was disbanded, its surviving members sent to different platoons. They had lost too many men to continue as a unit. Doc Worley and Billy Connard were transferred to another platoon, and a short time later, they were hit again by an improvised explosive device, a roadside bomb.
I watched the whole thing happen. I was on the radio. He was running. Then all of a sudden there was an explosion. And when it cleared, he was just laying there. So instantly I thought he was killed also. So I called it in. You know, we had another KIA. Then I looked away and I looked back. I saw him sit up. So I called back that he was still alive. And about that time, another Marine was making his way to him. So at that time, Doc Worley, I hollered at him, asked if he's all right. He said no. And he was starting to put his own tourniquet on, take care of himself. Then he had the other Marine assist him a little bit. Then he got the morphine, put a little morphine in him to ease the pain. And they put him in the vehicle.
Doc Worley's war was over. His leg gone, many painful operations ahead, but a profound appreciation of life, friendship, and God.
God gave me the strength to just roll over and just start working on myself and you know, put a tourniquet on my own leg and just save my own life. I mean, that was something that God gave me the strength to do. And I've come away from Iraq with some of the greatest friends I could ask for, and just about Job's faith in God.
Faith, love, grief, and pride, the emotions they carried home.
I know that the Marines, that they're fighting for their country, they're fighting for our freedom, and I've been told the only way for a Marine to die is on the battlefield. So these Marines died doing what they loved, and that's how it makes it easy for me to deal with. You know, it's just the worst part for all of us was knowing that, you know, 7 families were going to get notified that, you know, they just lost a son.
When we come back, homecoming and healing, loss and pride. The final chapter in the story of Pale Rider 3. We have heard about the ambush outside Fallujah that shattered the Marine platoon known as Pale Rider 3. Now, the final part of their story. In Fallujah, a field memorial. 7 Marine boots lined up next to the 3 of the Iraqi Special Forces killed. And in California, Mick Nygaard Bukowski came home. He was buried in his hometown.
Doctor!
How you doing, sir?
What's going on? How are you?
I'm doing great.
In Doc Worley's hospital room in Washington, D.C., Zirkle and Worley reflect on their experiences.
And all these people taking care of me, I can do 1,000 different jobs coming out of this if I wanted to. Where people, I mean, people are so awesome. I mean, I'm convinced that I can get a job on a marathon team, and they would give me the job just because they have, you know, so much love and respect for their, you know, the veterans, that they'd give me a job. I'd sit on the bench all the time, obviously, but by God, I'd be there wearing the shirt, you know. And you know, there's just it's almost too much support to ever acknowledge. It's been awesome.
Some people, you know, they ask me, you know, if you had to do it over again, will you join the Marine Corps, you know, after everything you've been through? Yeah, I look at them and I say, you know, without a doubt. I mean, the Marine Corps is such a huge part of who I am, and not just the Marine Corps, but also the combat experiences and the relationships, and I mean, everything that I've learned. I mean, it's part of me, and it always will be. And yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a wonderful organization with outstanding people, and yeah, I'd do it over again 100 times.
Combat's combat. You know, if you've never been there, you're never really going to experience what it's like. But some of the memories I have is just the bonds you make with the guys you're over there with. I mean, these guys are, like I said, your family, your brothers. You're there with them through it all. So it's just just times hanging out with the guys. You know, there were times when, you know, we were just tired, sometimes cold, hot, and you just kind of look at each other and you're like, wow, this is terrible. But you just laugh about it and you just carry on. You get done what needs to be done. And then, like I said, we can all look back at it now and maybe cry a few tears for some of the brothers we lost.
Those who didn't make it home live on in the hearts of those who survived from the platoon, the company, the entire Corps.
He died with pride, and I'm very proud of my son. I wish he didn't go. I wish he didn't die, but I am very proud of my son.
I want people to remember that these kids, these boys and girls, these high school students, barely out of high school, are willing to go and do anything that we ask them to do, not because of politics, not because they're going to get any kind of fame out of it, not because they're going to get money, just simply because we ask them to do it. I want people to ask themselves, what have I done today worth somebody giving their life for me?
The men and women on the front lines, as well as their families, are the real story of this war. Starting tomorrow, we will spend the rest of this week focusing on the sacrifices made so Iraqis can go to the polls this Sunday. Christiane Amanpour, Anderson Cooper, and I will host a 2-hour primetime special, Iraq